So let's talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, the pros and the cons of fiancé visas. So all of these different options that we're talking about have some good things and some maybe not so good things. And some of the features of the different options are good for some people and bad for other people. And that's really one of the ways that you can figure out what's the best option for you based on your priorities, based on things that you would consider negative and things that you might consider a plus. So for fiancé visas, probably the best parts about fiancé visas and the reasons why people who have multiple options may decide, yeah, we're going to go with the fiancé visa. There are a few reasons that are pretty common. And so probably the number one is that the fiancé visa is usually faster than consular processing. So even though times vary, typically, no matter where we're at time-wise, the fiancé visas are usually beating the consular processing cases by at least a few months, like maybe 2 or 3 months, sometimes more. So for people who have a fiancé who lives abroad and they just want them to be in the US with them as fast as humanly possible, well, it's not fast, unfortunately, because it's the US government and the bureaucracy is still there, but is the fastest of the different options, for people who don't already live in the US and can adjust status. So that's probably the number one benefit of a fiancé visa. Also, sometimes people want to have more time to get to know each other or spend time living together before they definitely get married, and the fiancé visa allows them to do that for up to 90 days inside the United States. So that's another huge benefit of this particular option. The other benefit has to do with if you're bringing children, minor children, foreign fiancé has children that they want to bring with them. You can bring children up until they turn 21. As long as they travel into the United States with that visa before they turn 21, they can also come with you. And so that's an advantage over consular processing, where you can only bring kids that, you were stepchildren of the US citizen who were under 18 at the time you got married. So if if the fiance has kids who are over 18 but under 21 and they might want to come with you, then the fiancé visa is a good option for that reason also. Another reason that people sometimes say they want to do a fiancé visa is if they want to get married inside the United States. Maybe the US citizen has a lot of family that wants to be there for the wedding. So, sometimes that works out well for you. If you were planning on doing that, that works within the plan. So those are some of the main benefits of the fiancé visa. Some of the drawbacks are, first of all, it's the most paperwork of any of the different options. And that's because you're basically doing sort of like a consular processing and an adjustment, because first you have to get a visa from a US embassy, the fiancé visa, and then you have to turn around and go through the whole stinking process to get your, to get your adjustment of status, to get your green card. So it's like doing 2 in 1, and no one wants to do extra government paperwork unless those benefits really appeal to you. So sometimes people don't prefer the fiancé visa because they just don't want to go through that much paperwork, and because it's 2 processes, that increases costs all around, legal fees or government fees, and just the process and the cost involved is typically highest with a fiancé visa because it's just a lot of paperwork. So that's important to keep in mind. Another thing that people sometimes don't like or just does not work in their specific scenario is that when someone comes in with a fiancé visa, they don't get work authorization right when they get in the United States. So it's true that somewhere in the law it says, if you Google, can a K-1 get work authorization, you might see that it says yes online. And it says yes on the books, but the practicality is that it takes at least 90 days to get temporary work authorization. So you actually can't, because you only get 90 days on that visa. So it's like one of those silly points in the law where it's like, theoretically you can, but in reality it's impossible. So you have to assume that when you're coming in on a fiancé visa that your fiancé is going to be there for a good 3 to 6 months potentially, where they can't work lawfully in the United States. And depending on the state you live in, they might not be able to get a driver's license either. And so there's this period of time where they have to volunteer or get to know their community or just hang out and cook at home. But for some people, they feel really lonely or really depressed, or they just are not stay-at-home type people. and they just can't stand that. Especially if they have a high-powered job in the foreign country and they were wanting to begin working immediately, or they can't afford to have a 6-month gap in earnings, then that might be a reason why consular processing would be preferable to you specifically instead of a fiancé visa. So for some people, that's a concern. Another drawback is that you have to get married inside the United States. At least the civil ceremony has to happen inside the United States. So even if you, so that really is a preference thing, but if you had your heart set on getting married in the foreign country, then, or taking a honeymoon immediately after your civil wedding in a foreign country, then the fiancé visa is really not going to work very well with your specific needs. Sometimes people overcome this drawback or that, disadvantage of the fiancé visa by just doing the civil ceremony in the US, and maybe later on, once the green card comes, they plan the big celebration in the home country abroad, or plan this big, delayed sort of honeymoon internationally, and they just split up the two different parts of the process, since they do have to legally get married inside the US if they have gone the fiancé visa route. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the reasons why you might want to or not want to opt for a fiancé visa. And as you're thinking about this, take some notes so that you can hash that out more about your specific circumstance with the attorney at your consultation, and figure out what would be the advantages and disadvantages for you as a couple specifically.